Ivan Nicholas Johnson, a man who has worn many hats over the span of his lifetime, is revered as one of the Bahamas' most prized professional English first-class cricketers and owner of the country's most popular tabloid newspaper, The Punch. It's not often that you hear of a national sporting giant switching gears and careers into the field of journalism, but this is one Renaissance man that has quite the story to tell. Born June 27, 1953, Johnson was educated at Queen's College, Nassau, Bahamas, and the Seafood Court Preparatory School at Malvern Link, Worcestershire. His high school education was completed at Malvern College, where he took O and A levels. With a firm foundation in education, Johnson's family had no doubt that he would someday become a national treasure. And his success would come as no surprise, considering the paths his father and grandfather blazed. Johnson's late father, Basil Johnson, was a World War II flight sergeant. He was the only black Bahamian to fly in the British Royal Air Force during World War II. And then there was Johnson's grandfather, Thomas Tot Walsh, who was a professional footballer, a center forward for the Bolton Wanderers and Crystal Palace. Following in the footsteps of his grandfather's love for sports, Johnson began his junior cricket career back in 1966. At age 13, Johnson was the first boy to score a century for Seafood Court Preparatory School. In that same year, during his last summer at Seafood Court, Johnson hit 300s, including one score of 150 runs not out. The headmaster, Geoffrey Milton himself, an old Malvernian, was proud of Johnson's outstanding batting performances.
Ivan Johnson, in my opinion, is the greatest unsung Bahamian sportsman in the Bahamas today. And the reason why he's unsung is because he played cricket. In the old days, in the 50s and the 60s, cricket was the sport in the Bahamas. In fact, it was the national sport in the Bahamas. Now I believe sailing is the national sport. But cricket was surpassed, I guess you'd say, by baseball and then basketball and, of course, always track and field. But Ivan, I first met when I was 5 years old, and we went to school together the time we were 5 until we graduated from high school at age 18. And in the first school we went to, which was a prep school in England called Seafood Court, Ivan was the best cricket player that went to school. He scored 3 centuries and numerous 50s. As you know, in cricket, to score a century is a big deal. In fact, in those days, if you scored a 50, the head of the school would give you, the schoolmaster would give you a cricket ball as a prize. If you scored a 75, he'd give you a pair of pads, which were the pads that we used on our legs to protect the legs from in case you got hit by a cricket ball. He really was a sporting legend at that school.
From 1968 to 1971, Johnson was a player in the Malvern 11 and was captain in 1971. He played for the All England School senior and junior under-16 teams and was also a member of Malvern's Soccer First 11 in the 1969 to 1970 season and the Rackets' first pair in the 1970 to 1971 season. And then it was on to the big league. Johnson played several second 11 matches for Worcestershire County Cricket Club in his summer holidays. In 1971, he played in 2 games for the Northamptonshire County Cricket Club seconds. His first-class cricket debut came the following year. In June 1972, at age 18, Johnson made his first-class debut for Worcestershire. It was made in a drawn match against Oxford University. Johnson took the wickets of Michael Heel and Barry May in Oxford's only innings and made 7 and then 1 not out. Johnson was retained for the county championship match against Warwickshire County Cricket Club. A month later, Johnson took 7 for 57 for the second 11 against Warwickshire the second, and then was recalled to the firsts, where he remained for 6 games, 3 at first class and 3 in List A. Then in a John Player League one-day match, Johnson took 2 vital wickets, allowing Worcestershire to beat Nottinghamshire by 38 runs. Worcestershire placed second in the league that year. Johnson spent the remainder of the 1972 season on a tour of the West Indies with the England under-19 cricket team. He topped the batting averages in the junior test matches and was the only young England player to score a century on the tour. This meant that Johnson was the leading new teen professional county cricketer in England. A year later in 1973, cricket enthusiasts would witness what was described as Johnson's best year in professional cricket.
All great athletes are great not just because of their athletic prowess and talent, but because they're intelligent people. And Ivan certainly was no exception to that rule. He had a tremendous cricketing brain, but more than that, he had a tremendous memory. Ivan can tell you, even today, the names, the birthdays, the nicknames of every person he went to school with and all the schoolmasters. And I think he used this in his cricket because if you're a batsman, for example, you want to know what type of pitch or bowls the bowler is going to be bowling to you based on previous experience. If you're a bowler, you want to know what type of bowl the batsman doesn't like and what he does like so you can bowl in the appropriate type of ball. When he was in school also, he could always write an essay. I mean, he was a phenomenal essay writer. And I think these two things, the memory and the ability to write and write well in English, were probably the reasons why he went into journalism. And he worked on Wall Street, Fleet Street in England for many years. And he also worked for Rupert Murdoch in Australia as one of the as editor down in Australia. So he really crafted his writing skills and his journalistic skills by being in the best place possible to be trained as a journalist, which is Fleet Street. There's no other place in the world that I know of where a person could get a better training than Fleet Street. So he got a chance to really use his God-given talents and his creativity, and they were molded to the point where he was able to come back to the Bahamas and start his newspaper, The Punch, which at the time nobody even gave any credence to the fact that it could be something. Most people thought it'd be a flash in the pan and it'd be over in 6 months. And now it's the leading newspaper in the Bahamas that everybody reads, and love him or hate him, like it or don't like it, everybody reads The Punch.
Early in 1975, at age 21, Johnson announced his plan to leave the Worcestershire team in the following September to pursue an interest in journalism. Whether many were aware of it or not, Johnson had actually been employed as a trainee reporter at the Tribune newspaper in Nassau during the English county cricket off-season winter months. He had this side gig since 1972. So when he retired from cricket in '75, Johnson became a trainee journalist with Thomson Newspapers, owned by Lord Thomson on Fleet. He worked at the Hemel Hempstead Evening Post Echo and studied at the Harlow College of Journalism in Essex. This training was followed by 1 year's cadetship at Reuters. 10 years later, in August 1989, Johnson returned to Nassau, and in February 1990 began his own tabloid format newspaper titled The Punch. A world-class former cricketer and now owner of one of the country's most sought-after news sources, Johnson continues to make his mark on the pages of Bahamian history.